Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. I am your host, Kelly Meehan, Spirit Baby medium, medical intuitive, and mentor. I believe we are entering into a new psychic structure of our reality that embodies deeper trust, self-love, and fearless integrity. Our new world energy needs us all to make space for it so we can support consciously conceiving parents, true intuitive pregnancies, and trusting the nature of birthing babies upon our lands with co-creation of heart. I thank you personally for tuning into all things spiritual and earth grounding, conversations that support each other and teach us to be open, free, and thrive within autonomous living and with the spark of wisdom. This is Spirit Baby Radio. Welcome to episode 162, March 31st, 2023. Heal your heart from within. Love is the ultimate healer. What does your heart health have to do with a thriving life? How can you rebuild and heal using heart intelligence? Are you aware of the power of the heart on your conception into a motherhood journey? And so I have a special guest here. Her name is Teresa. For 2 decades, Teresa Anne Palmer, Holistic Cardiology Nurse, has been connecting individuals to their hearts. Teresa realized through her own journey with heart health and her dedication to her career to giving each and every heart the love and caring it needs to thrive. Teresa understands the importance of mind, body, spirit working together and utilizes a holistic approach to cardiology and cardiac care. She has been honored by the International Association of Top Professionals in 2019 as the Nurse Practitioner of the Year. And in 2021, she was chosen as the Holistic Healthcare Practitioner of the Year and has received the esteemed Lifetime Achievement Award. Teresa is an international best-selling author, and her book, Heal Your Heart from Within, is available through Balboa Press, Amazon, Hay House, and online bookstore. And I will share more about how to connect with Teresa and her book. Teresa, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to speak with you today and your audience.
Yeah, and I always go over like, how did I meet people? How does that's like my thing. And so I love it. I joined the Mighty Networks on podcasting, and I didn't think much of it. And it's a really sweet space. And then there's Teresa. Like I must have heard your heart. And there was something, and everybody that knows me and my audience knows me that everything is energy to me. Like connection with people, anything. Like I don't think about things, I just react on energy. And I loved when me and Teresa connected by phone before, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's all about the heart, and we love the heart. And I was just talking earlier to Teresa that I cried a lot in this book, and that's me because many of you already know that my brother died of a heart attack. He was 43, and it was, kind of sudden. It wasn't like planned. We didn't really know, but there was signs before. I later found out that doctors were like, you're just having anxiety. And I suspect it was something more. But so this is like, ooh, deep breaths, very activating because there's just so much in that. And her book, I'm going to keep going on about how awesome her book is. And it's a must-have read for really, like we were saying, just ways to talk about it, to just go into your heart with little exercises and tips. But Teresa, I want to hear your inspiration for the book, and we're going to talk about intuition. Please share.
Okay. Well, first off, I think we've been looking at the heart from the wrong perspective. I've done 30 years of cardiology, holistic cardiology, and you always hear terms like heart disease, high blood pressure, ischemic heart disease, heart attack. When we talk about the heart, we never talk about how great the heart is. We talk about the diseases of the heart. And when people pay attention to their heart, they don't connect to their heart every day because it's an involuntary response. You don't wake up every morning and ask, is your heart beating? Just like you don't ask if you're breathing. It's just something that happens and is taken for granted. That changes when either something goes wrong, is perceived to have gone wrong, and then we start to look at the heart and try to figure out what's wrong. So most people don't connect to their heart until they perceive a problem with the heart. And that's the two most common things are either an irregular heartbeat, a heart jumping around, or chest pain. And that's the time when people wake up to their heart. So the approach that I take is totally different, that if we could connect to our heart every day, live from our heart, and that's with gratitude, compassion, resilience, and forgiveness, or beginning the process of forgiveness, we take ourselves out of fight or flight, out of stress. We put ourselves in inner calm, and then we're also able, because the heart is the largest energy field in the physical body, to then give that type of energy and that peace and calmness to other people who are around us. So it's not difficult to connect to our heart. It's just that we've never been taught that. We've always looked at the heart from the disease perspective. And all that is kind of changing. I think now people are looking more to how they can help themselves and look to themselves to be the creators of not only good health and well-being, but of their whole life.
Yeah, when you're saying something, I'm getting like, kind of an inspired thought, and it's something I've seen a lot lately, and maybe you can speak about it. And of course, you're not like giving any medical advice, but I notice a lot of people have heart palpitations. And I'm
Yeah.
often curious because I've had them before throughout the years. I don't go into panic when my body speaks to me. I know a lot of people do, but when I notice it come through for me, to me, it's usually a heart shifting and it's an awareness that I'm like, oh, something is changing. But usually it's just for a moment or two, or sometimes I feel it for days and it's very random. But I know some people feel like they live in that space. And what can you even say generally, or, again, about heart palpitation? And maybe we're all
Yeah.
wrong. Maybe it's not heart palpitation. Who knows? It's like, oh, my heart feels different. Something's happening there.
Well, number one, you should always get it checked out, because
Mhm.
there are underlying things with the heart is an electrical conduction system. So it could short circuit, and that could be one reason. There also could be something underlying structure, a valve, anything like that. So the first thing I would tell people is you're not foolish to go get things checked out. It's wise to go get things checked out. Are there always these structural problems? In 2020, I could tell you practically every other person, our office was open the entire time. We saw patients face to face, because a lot of our patients have so many underlying medical problems that it's hard to distinguish things over a video telehealth. So we were open, completely open. And I can tell you almost everybody that walked through that door had heart palpitations. And majority of it was anxiety.
Yeah.
Because when we become anxious, we go into fight or flight. And that disrupts the balance of the heart. You start secreting adrenaline and epinephrine and norepinephrine, the same things that they'll use on your heart when your heart stops to get it started again. If you secrete too much of that, it wreaks havoc with the heart.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, you're secreting these hormones. Your body is telling you that you're in danger. Now, the brain
Mm.
doesn't know the difference between perceived danger and real danger. I mean, if somebody breaks into your house and is holding a gun to your head, you're in real danger. You need to run. Your heart rate's going to speed up. Blood is going to be taken away from the stomach, from the stomach, from like the stomach, the liver. You're going to breathe faster. Everything's going to work to get you out of that situation. So it's a fight or flight. When you're not in physical danger, the body doesn't know this. So the body reacts the same way. So your heart starts to beat faster, which could be a reason that people feel the palpitation.
Mhm.
Suddenly they're feeling a faster heartbeat because the body is saying, we're in danger. Let's let the heart beat faster. Let's let this person breathe faster. Let's get more blood going to their extremities and going to the brain, because they have to be able to think and get out of the situation. So we become indoctrinated into that fight or flight. And the more we stay in fight or flight, or the more we go in or out of it. And that's a lot of worry,
Mm.
anxiety, fear. the more it does disrupt the body systems. Could it lead to a problem with a structure or a valve or anything? Absolutely. But, you know, a lot of times when we experience these things, we are experiencing anxiety, but it's vital to get things checked out, because you don't want to be the person that's dealing with something else, told or thinks in their mind it's anxiety, and then lands
Yeah.
up having a heart attack or something.
Well, to that I feel like that was, yeah, that, I mean, and that does happen, and that's the tricky part. But yeah, it's kind of like I feel like we're our own I call our own medical intuitive, in a sense of like, oh, something feels off, or I need to go get it checked. And I've helped different women really push even to their medical providers to say, I tell them, you know, there's actually have a story that's on my website of a woman who had issues with her lungs. Excuse me, as I'm coughing. I
Yeah.
can't be tapping into her energy now, but maybe I am. And so we were really just looking at baby energy, talking about conception. And she's like, you know what, Kelly, like, I just have this hard time breathing. And I said, well, what does your doctor say, you know? And well, the doctor's just thinking it's not a big deal. And I said, you have to push what you feel is important to you. And we kept talking a lot about that. And there was a heaviness and a different energy in her lungs. And at the time, I wasn't scanning energy bodies as I am now. But after her, I started to like go deeper into her story around it. And so again, she like was very winded, and it just something was unnatural about it. And I said, it's okay to say, hey doc, I want this or that. And if they're like, no, it's not a big deal, but you feel the urgency, you have to say, you know what, this is not working for me. I really need this. Whether it's intuition and fear, it's okay. And so for her, it was very much intuition. She sends me an email later and says, you know what, Kelly, I want to thank you for pushing my intuition. She said, because eventually the doctor finally did a scan and they found a whole bunch of blood clots in her lungs. And
Oh,
they were surprised. And they did say, the doctor did tell her you maybe had a week or two left to live, right? And it's like, that's what you really want to hear. I don't know if she's still with this doctor, but they figured it out. She moved on to conceive. And it was kind of like interesting for me to sit with her saying, and I don't even remember really what we said in the session to details, but whatever she needed to hear. And she heard, like, I need to trust my intuition. And she
yeah.
did, because she probably wouldn't be here, obviously, the way she shared the story with me. And I'm going, wow, that's a really big deal. So I'm a very big advocate in the conception energies. And a lot of people I work with, you know, with fertility clinics or medical doctors or nurses, it's like you're allowed to say yes and no to procedures and things. Or if you're not feeling right about certain hormones in your body is not the same as other people. And that you really have to listen to that. And especially with intervention. And I see women
Yeah.
succeed in conception with intervention when they're slowing down and they're really listening. You know what? Maybe this dosage isn't really for you. You have some people have allergic reactions, or
Mm.
it makes it harder for the body. And so I want to hear, you know, I know, you know, in, you know, intuition. I want it. We talked to behind the scenes. I'm like, no, save it. Don't talk, Teresa. I want
Yeah.
everybody to hear this. But let's talk about intuition a little bit.
Sure. Intuition is really our empowerment. And it's one of the reasons that the heart is our superpower. It's this power, not only does it sustain life, without a beating heart, there is no physical life, but it also helps build immunity, things like compassion, gratitude. The heart sits close to the thymus gland, which then gets activated and helps with immunity. The peace and calm is the vagus nerve. That's the physiological response of getting out of fight or flight. And also the seat of our soul, which really is our inner knowing. So when we talk about intuition, intuition really is a natural thing that we're all born with. You see children, they intuitively know how to play, how to do things, where to go, what to do. As we become adults, we become conditioned not to listen to ourselves. We become conditioned that other people, these experts out there, know more than we do. That, that you go to an expert. If you feel that there's something wrong with you, you're not the judge of that. Somebody else is the judge of that has more education. And that's not really true. I mean, it is true that other people have more education. They could guide you in the right direction, maybe towards testing, maybe towards something. But we all know when something is wrong. It's that inner GPS, that inner guidance. And it's when we don't follow it that we land up in trouble. I can't tell you over the years how many people I had would say to me, they just knew something was wrong or they thought they had cancer. They would go for all different testing. They would go for different things. Things weren't found. I would say within 3 to 5 years, something was found that
Wow.
substantiated how the people felt. And I always tell people, whatever you're feeling, if there's something wrong, there's something wrong. You need to pursue it. If these doctors, nurses, whomever will not listen to you, you need to find ones who do. It is not something to be dismissed. If you go through all the testing and you go through things and there's nothing found, well, then that's great. Maybe you were feeling some anxiety. Maybe there is an underlying fear,
Mm.
but why chance it? Because 9 times out of 10, there's something going on with your body that's out of balance. And you may not know exactly what it is, but there's something wrong. And if you don't pursue it, it really could have dire consequences.
And I know we live in we don't want to be suffering. I feel like we do this way too much as humans. And like I've seen this actually a lot with males. Sorry, males, I love you, but I've seen this with a lot of males going, "Oh, I don't feel right," or they're pushing through. And I've seen people get cancer and die very quickly. And I'm going, and I know male, female, I know it's a different how we're set up, all chemically and just in the world and like what our role is. And so, because I know we talk about, women are so intuitive, but I know men are intuitive too. But just, obviously we're listening to it differently, I suppose. But you make a good point too about, and this is the tricky part I know a lot of people have is like the fear versus the intuition. And what I tell a lot of women, especially, I said, you know what? It's okay to make a choice out of fear. Sometimes we have to do that, and that's okay. Because let's say what I mean by that is let's say your intuition is saying do this, but there's a fear around that doctor or that medical establishment. So there's like two parts to that, right? It's like, oh, but that now where's my and I like what you said, intuition, it's just there. It's just like a part of you. And but I could see, I've done it myself, like over analyzing, especially if there's some old energy around it. But I actually pride myself in just every day's intuition. I tell people every day, all the time. You could sit and go into practice. You can get Heal Your Heart from Within book because there's actually
Yeah.
really great practices in here. And I just really love them. I even feel like you can probably do these with children, older children, maybe
Yeah.
preteens and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah,
It's a book for everybody, and it
yeah.
wasn't written for any one or any one group specifically. Everybody could benefit from it because we all have this power within us. We just need to tap into it. And, I talk a lot about changing the inner landscape. A lot of times when we
Mm.
look at heart health, the big push is about diet, exercise. I'm not saying those things aren't important. They are, but if you don't change the inner landscape and you're living with fear, with anxiety, you're living in fight or flight, you're undoing any good that your diet, exercise, other lifestyle changes can do for you. So it all starts from within. You have to get that landscape to
Mm.
peace and calm. You have to feel good inside yourself, connected to your heart, self love. All that's a part of self care. And once you do those things, then when you do your diet, exercise, if you take supplements, whatever else you do, or medication, then they work properly because your body is in balance. So a lot of times we concentrate more on the outside. I have so many patients always say to me, "What's my cholesterol? What's my cholesterol? What's my cholesterol?" Okay, it is what it is. I'm not saying it's not important, but what about, the other 99.9% of heart health that you're missing out on?
Mm. I do hear
You're
that a lot.
constant.
Yeah. It's like, what are my numbers? What is my blood pressure? What is my, and I'm just like, it's not, it's, it's different for me to look at it from the outside because I have people in my family that are like going on about that. And I'm going, it's not something I ever look at because I've never had a problem with it. So maybe that's easier for me to say that, because I've never had any problems in those areas. But I'm also like, there is kind of, we can become very obsessed with
Yeah.
tools and other things. And, numbers are wrong sometimes, and we have to be open to that. We know that. But then I think that's where people get nervous, or something you shared too is like, I do work with a lot of people that have anxiousness, fear, and even, which is why I love the somatic psychology, right? We talk about the nervous system. And I just saw this great nervous system expert, and she actually, I haven't dived deep into her work yet, but she talks about the feminine nervous system. I don't hear anyone talking about that. Yeah, I do feel like with our hormones and our connection to our bodies, it's got to be a different experience, as opposed to, male like system. I know there are a lot of similarities, but you talk a lot in the book too about the fight or flight stress, and even a little bit of stories from people. And I know you've seen this too, is like some people just live in anxious states as their normal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of taught that. I mean, we're taught not only to multitask, but the more you could do, the better you are. That if you could do your job, do this, do that, do 100 things at once, that you're better than the person that sits down and concentrates on writing something or journaling or takes one step at a time. When really the opposite is true, because the brain can't process everything. So when you're
Mm.
doing too many things, you're not good at any of them, because your brain is just picking out bits and fragments. It can't process everything. So it's not until you really sit down and do one thing at a time that you could actually become good at it. It would be like trying to play every sport in the book. You may be able to play those sports, but you're not really becoming good at any of them, because you can't have the focus and the concentration to get better at it.
I
So
like
we
that
think,
yeah, I love that you're saying that, because actually, it's funny right now. As you're talking about the brain, I'm literally getting this like pain in my head. I'm like, oh man, Teresa's good, man. She's like tapping into things. What you say about the brain, it's true. Everybody I meet, it's almost like, and I know it's an overused word. I mean, there are people that are probably ADD, ADHD, right? But it is the word we hear all the time. It's like everybody's ADD, apparently. Again, not minimizing that there are real, hard things around that. But that makes me think of that is like we are in a very like I have to produce culture. Things have to come now. And I just think it's such divine timing that we're connecting, because in the past 2 weeks, my intuition is telling me you're going to sit in the chair and stare at the window. And I'm like, really?
mhm,
I'm like, what? No, I got to go do something, do and do. I've got to clean, got to take care of the kids, got to write. And I literally feel this is what's amazing in these past 2 weeks. I feel like there's limitless time. Like I'm like, wow, there is nothing that has to be done. And I'm in such deep reflection around it, and I'm in very curiosity with it. But I know I had a friend once say, I need to be productive, productive. And then I said what I was doing in the day, and she goes, "You're so productive." And my husband was laughing. I was literally laying in bed in my pajamas. And I
yeah,
said, "Yeah, I'm being productive. I'm laying in the bed in my pajamas, just like chilling out." I'm like, can't that be productive? Right?
yeah, yeah. And, we think we always have to be productive. And we don't always have to be productive. You need time for yourself, because that's how you listen to your intuition. You need that time to just be quiet. And that means no disturbance with the phone, with the TV, with the radio, to just really sit down, be quiet, whether you're lying in bed, whether you're, sitting, whatever. But just really taking that time for yourself to just connect with yourself. And, that's so important. I talk about meditation a lot as the gold standard for health, because I think, meditation takes you out of fight or flight.
Mm.
Meditation puts you in balance, connects you to your vagus nerve. It does so many things for you that we don't even have to call it meditation. I had patients say to me, well, I can't sit for 5 or 10 minutes. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you can if you really want to. And,
Mm.
I would say to people, I've never had children or anything, so I don't know what it's like. But I would say to people, if you have to get somebody to soccer practice, you find the time, right? Oh, yeah, yeah, because that's important.
Mm.
Well, why isn't it important for you to sit quietly for 5 minutes? And they have no idea what to say.
I love
They
that you're
have no
saying
idea.
that. Yeah, this is good because I have my own excuses and other people do, but you're right. Time is not the excuse. There's time for other things. And yet 5 minutes is not a lot to be in a
No.
still, quick, quiet. And so I do a lot of outside of meditation. There's two things I like to teach about is I call it like somatic exercise and meditation, which feels separate to me. And I teach this thing called orienting, which is not my term. It's in the somatic field. And it's literally just standing for like a 2 or 3 minutes, breathing, like listening to your body, noticing your environment, noticing your feet. And like I started doing this more and more in my programs, and people were feeling a huge difference from very little time. I think when people think meditation, okay, got to put the candles on, it's got to be 30 minutes and I got to think of nothing. And then it's
Yeah.
like,
And we think, it's impossible not to think. We're thinking human beings. So to try to empty your mind is really a misconception. What you do is you don't dwell on things. So what I tell people is you sit quietly if thoughts come. You say, okay, thank you for coming. And you let it pass like a cloud in the sky. You don't dwell on it. If a shopping list comes in your mind, okay, thank you for reminding me, boom, that's it. It goes out of your mind. So it's only when we start to dwell on things that we become obsessed with things. And, we make it a pastime that we have to take care of everybody but ourselves.
hmm.
Whereas, years ago, I used to teach a course at a retreat. It was a religious retreat, and it was called Put Your Own Oxygen Mask On First. And it was for caretakers because caretakers never believed that they had the right to take care of themselves. They were always putting the other person first. And what would end up happening is the caretaker would get sick, and then there was nobody to take care of the person.
Mm,
So it's so imperative that you take care of yourself. The airlines say put your own oxygen mask on first, then help others. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to breathe and you're not going to be able to help anybody. So it's not being selfish. It's all about self-care. And that's really the highest form of self-care that we can do, I believe, is take a few minutes every day to just sit with ourselves and to really work with our intuition, to
mm,
really get that dormant self-knowing back again that, we're taught to kind of squelch down as adults, to really listen to what our body, what our mind, and what our spirit is saying. And then we're the ones that know best. We're our best advocates. My best patients are the ones that know what's going on with them. That could say, I'm feeling this. I don't think this is right. Could we do this because I have a feeling this may have happened? Or, I just feel out of sync. Would you put a Holter monitor on me because I believe that something during the course of my day is throwing me off balance and causing a problem? And 9 times out of 10, people are right. 9 times out of 10. And, we're also in the medical profession. We're not told to really partner in our own healthcare.
mm,
We're really not. I mean, I one time went to a healthcare provider and something came up about something cardiac with a member of my family. And I asked a question to the provider and I got a snippy answer.
mm,
The answer was, well, you've done cardiology for a number of years. What do you think about that? And I
mm,
thought to myself, wow, you know, here I'm just asking a question for somebody who can't ask the question, looking for an answer, and it gets thrown back at me like, well, why do you want to participate in the care? Is it because you think you know so much? And I think it's changing, but when people go to a provider, they listen more than they actually participate in the
mm.
visit.
Yeah. I There's a few things you said, and I want to kind of reverse a little back. I heard the word like selfless, like to be selfless, self-care, to like you talked about putting on your mask and then helping others in that way. But it is so opposite. We know this. And a lot of clients that come to me for support are actually nurses. And I love the nurses because and they don't tell me they're nurses because their energy field tells me they're nurses. Because when I see a caretaker energy, and it's usually in the heart, by the way, or I see a
Yeah,
brighter light energy and I hear healer. So I'm like, oh, they must work in the healing profession. And like almost 100% of the time, they do. And then I know they are the caregivers. They're they're such a different energy. And I love that they're in my space because I want them to feel cared for and really own their connection to who they are. Something else you said here, I was writing it down real quick. I'm like, we talk even about, so kind of reversing back to those moments of, taking those few moments, being in the quiet and the laundry list in the head and coming back. And I loved how you shared that because it feels like there's permission with ourselves to be like, oh my gosh, it's okay to think about going down to the mailbox later or oh, I'll just come back. And there is a practice that I've been even practicing with because yeah, I can't empty my mind out. It doesn't work that
yeah.
way. I haven't achieved
No,
that yet. Maybe other people have,
I don't
but
think
I don't
anybody
know.
does. You
Yeah.
know, I've had a spiritual teacher for a number of years, Sri Dharma Mitra, who's known
Mm,
as the Rock of Yoga. And he'll always say, if anybody tells you to empty your mind, they're not being honest with you.
mm.
There's no way you could empty your mind. And, he would hold classes in the middle of Manhattan with the taxis and, the subway
Wow,
going.
yes.
And, he said, this is real life. We
Hmm.
think we're distracted. He said, but the point is you still do your practice. You take those few
Mm.
minutes or whatever it is to sit quietly if the horns are honking, if the subway's beeping all around you.
Which they are in New
And you,
York and Manhattan
yeah,
especially.
yeah. And you just take that time to be with yourself. It doesn't matter what's going on around you. It's the fact that you're being present in the moment. You're hearing those things, but you're not being affected by it.
I like that because it's almost like, yeah, outside noise, internal noise, and this kind of was my other thought that's I wanted to share was you talk about parenthood or motherhood, and what I know from being a mother, yeah, I mean, your brain feels like chaotic. Especially, I mean, I think the biggest thing is if you don't have family, if you don't have people, a tribe to take care of you, then the stress levels are like ridiculous. And so I know what I was trying to do with my firstborn was to try to, because my nervous system was just thrashed, my immune system was just gone. And there was so much, I had a lot of trauma, like just levels of it to work with. And I remember just sitting outside, putting him in the little, like the bouncy seat, and just taking that as a meditation, because it was all I
Mm-hmm.
could do to try to get there, right? And then I've told moms before, even if you're holding your baby and they're sleeping, that you can take a moment or two, check in with your body, check in with your heart. So it doesn't feel like, oh, I have to separate, I have to go do this thing. And I always say it's just for now. Like you're busy, you have your children, single moms. It's like it's just for now, which I know is a hard one because there is a lot in that. But I do, even in that level of feeling that level of stress and my own trauma, we could still take space. I'm kind of coming back to that, again, because I know my community's like, Kelly, they have a lot of good excuses. And it's like, no, your heart is important, your heart health, your heart wisdom, your heart energy. And I always say, and from a conception perspective, I feel like when we're receiving our children, we have to actually come from the heart first, and then the rest of the
Oh, yeah.
body listens. The womb, no, don't go to the womb first. Go to your heart, connect there with this baby being that you feel is meant to be a part of your life, whether they're coming soon or whether you've had birth loss. It's like go there and then I almost feel like I would say try not to use your left brain too much.
Yeah.
Drop in
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It's, we do think too much. And, again, it's kind of the way we're taught that you're supposed to be thinking, you're always supposed to be productive, you're always supposed to be doing. But, there is something to be said for doing nothing, attuning to yourself, and, really really looking at that inner landscape, really, really delving into it and really looking at the heart from the perspective of it's something that we should be joyous about every day. That,
Mm,
every morning before we get out of bed, we should be grateful that our heart is beating, acknowledge that the heart is beating, give the heart thanks for what it does. And really just kind of throughout the day, just be aware of, that the fact that your heart is beating, the fact that you have emotions. I teach people how to live from their heart, which is
mm,
really the heart does have a brain. And probably now about 12 years ago, I did some work with WBAI in New York, a radio station. And I did some work with Armand DeMille, who is one of my mentors. And we worked on the positive mind with Armand DeMille together. And at the time, it was a lot about broken heart syndrome. People were appearing in hospitals with what appeared to be heart attacks. 2 days later, they were walking out of the hospital with no damage to their heart. It turned out that the trauma was literally stopping their heart. It's
mm,
still, you could Google it, it's still a pretty big thing. It's called broken
wow.
heart syndrome. And he and I decided to do a program on it because I was very heart oriented. He was very brain oriented. And we did a whole program on thinking with the heart, that instead of the brain having a pre-programmed response, if you could take emotions and sit with them in your heart, you give yourself time instead of being reactive. So if emotions are good, everything is fine. The brain says everything is good. You go on. But if you're sitting with an emotion that's uncomfortable, if it goes to the brain, right away you go into fight or flight because the brain wants to get rid of it. The brain sees, again, the body is under threat. We're in danger, but we're not in danger. We just think we're in danger. And if you could process emotions through your heart and really sit with it and say to yourself, what is it that I'm feeling? Sometimes it's hard to sit with emotions, but we do. It's like, one example is I just recently took a trip, and I took a trip with a group of people, and some of the people in the group I did know, but some of them I kind of had a preconceived notion of how they were, which was pretty great in my mind. I saw them as being certain individuals, and I saw a different side of them when I was there, which was okay, but it was a little disappointing
Mm.
because I had to sit with the uncomfortableness of what I was feeling. And I remember, on the plane coming home thinking, I feel so empty. Like I should feel happy, and other people on the plane are, talking about the trip and what they saw. And yet I had this little sadness. And the sadness was the people that I had kind of put on a pedestal, not knowing any better. I saw things about them that took them off that pedestal, that made them very real to me. And as a result, I almost felt a little foolish in how I had thought of them before. And there was nothing to really feel foolish about. You learn by doing things, by being around people. And, it wasn't until I really processed that in my heart that, yeah, a couple of things had really let me down on the trip. And it's good that I learned these things, but it was a painful lesson. And as much as I wanted to brush it aside, when I did, I became anxious over it because I
Mm.
just felt empty and kept saying I should enjoy the trip as much as everybody else did. Look at how phenomenal it was, which it was. But at the same time, there were personal things that, all of a sudden, people that I thought were way up here were suddenly not that high. And I felt let down by them.
I totally feel for you, and I'm sure others do as well. I find like especially you're making me think about connecting in community with other people, and everybody is their own tone of their own energy to the world. And sometimes when I'm hanging out in spaces which I'm like, am I, I'm having a good time. This is great. The environment's beautiful, but then something feels like sits different. And for me, I'm such a somatic person. I get like physical things. And and I actually ended up sharing this with the group. I went to this beautiful place, retreat. It was gorgeous, and the women were amazing. But I started to notice my tongue, this sounds weird, at the back of my throat was tight, and it felt like an aching muscle. And then I go, "Oh, Kelly, can you really speak who you are?" And I'm like,
Mm,
"Oh," like it drove me crazy that like I feel like I am, but maybe I'm not. And then it kind of escalated, and it actually did. I had to like be really mindful of it's a muscle, it's tightening, and I had to talk it out with someone that could hold my energy, right? Because maybe that in that group, they don't really know me. I'm going to go and like spill out to, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, and it's
yeah.
okay. And so I actually went alone at one time sitting in nature, and I started to notice my lip tingling, and I was like, oh great, this, and then it manifested into more of a sore in my lip. And I was like, there's like no energy moving. And I was just kind of like, I laugh about it because I'm just like, that's so you, Kelly. Like you're gonna like, there's no logic to my mind going, of course I don't want that to happen, but it did. And I felt like two parts of me, like, oh, this is beautiful place, love it. But then it was the other part that was like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a rough feeling. And like I said, this was nothing that was major. It was just my own preconceived notions of how I felt certain things should have gone. Like I just expected these certain things. And then when I realized that, it really was just in my mind that this was how I perceived it and how I wanted it to be. But that
hmm
wasn't how it was. And that was okay. There was absolutely nothing wrong with it. But until I really sat with that empty feeling, it was like, okay, when I go to talk about this, this trip, why do I feel a part of me just feels so hollow? What is that about? And if you brush it off, and I did for about a week, because I really thought this is foolish. It was
hmm
a trip of a lifetime. You're crazy. You're just overwhelmed with things. And then I really sat down and I thought, no, I'm really, there's a couple of things that disappointed my ego. It just disappointed me and I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't prepared for it. And a part of me feels a little foolish,
hmm
maybe even thinking what I thought. There was no harm done, but, it was just kind of like, yeah, everybody's kind of human. And, I kind of made somebody be out to maybe be a little bit more than human. And I felt a little embarrassed about that too, even though nobody knew about it. It
Yeah,
was,
no, I totally get it. I totally get it. But
but we
yeah,
have to be real. And it
yeah.
wasn't until I got real with myself and was able to face it and say, you know what, it's okay. There's a piece of this that you just weren't happy with. Ego wise, you expected something else. It didn't happen. And that's the reality of the situation and deal with it. There's no harm in it. And I tell you, after that, my feeling of the hollowness went away. I was able to talk with people with joy about the trip and, speak about it without feeling like there was a part of me that was holding back. So,
I appreciate that story because it's kind of like we can, oh, especially women, really hold things in and then not able to, but feeling off, and then you're coming to like, okay, yeah, whatever that deeper like experience was for you, I'm sure it had so much validity in it, right? And we do see this in our life, and I feel like this is where we need tenderness, right? And love and compassion. And I feel like you're the I'm going to call you the heart guru right now. That just came to my mind. But Teresa, we're coming to the end, and I want you to share just ways that people can connect with your book, your website, or any, I don't know if you're on Instagram or anything.
I am.
Okay.
I have a few things. My Instagram handle is at well underscore being _gal. I also have a website that's wellbeinggal.com, and it's actually WELLBEINGGAL.com. And you could connect with me on that. My book is available through Balboa Press, through Amazon.com, and it is also on the Hay House online bookstore. There you have to search for it.
Amazing. Any final words?
Any final words? I would say to everybody that, our heart is our superpower. When we tap into that superpower, we become amazing people. It not only helps your health, but it helps you in your entire life. And to just connect with your heart every day, even if you just place your hand over your heart every morning and just feel your heart beating and see what that feels like for you, because everybody's heartbeat is really unique. It's like your own fingerprint. It's really your own unique signature. Nobody's heart is exactly the same as yours. And just become in tune with how your heart beats and how you feel, how you begin to feel with your heart, and be compassionate to yourself and others. Show gratitude to yourself and others. Be resilient and practice forgiveness. And all those things will put you in a state of peace and calm and get you out of the fight or flight. So there's nothing that's difficult about this. I share all the tools. They're easy tools. Some of them are meditations. And if you can, do a practice of meditation and yoga nidra, which is also in my book.
Thank you so much, Teresa, for being here. And remember, the book is Heal Your Heart from Within, and I'll have the links available. And I was telling Teresa, if I have not said it, this is a must-have book. This is it's very easy to connect with. It's just a great reminder of intuition and heart. And I don't know if anyone else could feel it. Teresa is literally the heart cohesive. She vibrates at such a level of heart space. And everybody knows how I speak about energy, that it's not just the book, it's the energy that's really in translation with us. And look, we do need more heart healing in our world. And so thank you, Teresa, for being here.
And thank you for having me. I so enjoyed it. And thank you to your audience. They're very inspiring, and the work you do is very inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank everybody for joining episode 162, March 31st, 2023. Heal Your Heart from Within. Love is the ultimate healer. Thank you for joining Spirit Baby Radio with your host, me, Kelly. And please join my newsletter for Spirit Baby 101 video on tips and practices. Order my book, It's a Journal, Sacred Communication, a Spirit Baby Journal, and cards for your healing journey. Spirit Baby Oracle cards, Soul Answers from Spirit Baby. To learn more about my services in supporting people all around the world in private one-on-one sessions, online classes, programs, and private VIP retreats, you can reach me at kellyannmeehan.com or spiritbabymedium.com, as well as on Instagram at spiritbabymedium, and email is spiritbabymedium@gmail.com. Remember to always listen to your heart communication, and your spirit child says hello. Thank you for joining.